Bonjour everyone, this is Tarek and today we're gonna look into Mage leveling. So this is part of a series of video I'm gonna make for Season 2 of Last Epoch. One for each class and basically showing you what I think is the best or one of the best build for leveling. At least what I would recommend for people of every level in Last Epoch. So it's fun if you're a new player or returning player. Maybe you're gonna learn a few things on those builds. I'm gonna also talk about like other options during this build video, and it's gonna be centered around Shadow Strike for Mage. Kind of weird in a sense because we're playing like a spell class fantasy-wise, and here we are doing like melee damage. But Shadow Strike, believe it or not, is I believe the best option for leveling Mage. It doesn't have any ramp or very little ramp. The only ramp that I can think of is actually lining up your buffing skills and also having stacks of armor shred. And that's pretty much it. So a lot of direct damage, a lot of ward generation, if you get it, like I'm a 2k ward without pushing it too much. And yeah, a lot of mobility as well. Pretty fun. So we're not gonna play Shadow Strike through the whole leveling process. What we're gonna do is we're gonna play Glacier up until a certain point, which is going to be unlocking the Gemini point in the passive tree. And after we get that point and spec into it, we transition to using Shadow Strike. The reason why we have two setups is so we have a better, let's say, transition between before Shadow Strike and after Shadow Strike. Because if you transition before that node, you could end up in a situation where your previous setup with Glacier would deal more damage than when you transition to Shadow Strike. So that's why I wait for the ability to do wield, and we have like a lot of flat damage, a lot of stats. We're also going to be close to level 35, which means that we are going to be able to spec into Flame Ward. We're going to talk about that in a few moments. The other options that you have for Mage, I'm going to briefly mention two. The first one is Glacier. Glacier, really good as a sorcerer, and also Volcanic Orb. Those two are, I think, one of the other really good option for Mage. And you want to play Sorcerer, not Rune Master. I think Rune Master is the worst leveling spec / mastery for Mage at the moment. Because Sorcerer has access to a lot of free stats through Arcane Ascendance, through the passive tree. Even the Mastery like gives more damage per 2 mana cost. Gives a bit of mana as well. And Glacier and Volcanic Orb are both abilities that cost a lot of mana. So the reason I'm not going for those two is just because of Arcane Ascendance, honestly. Arcane Ascendance, you cannot move, and you cannot lock into playing a weird playstyle where you stop, you get an insane amount of stats, and you spam your Glacier and your Volcanic Orb. So I much rather prefer playing Shadow Strike. It has, I would say, also a nice damage ramp going into the end game as well. It's pretty fun to build around. You're gonna see that in a few moments. Now, how you want to play? So for the first setup, when we use Glacier, it's basically gonna look like this. So we use your teleport, move around. Whenever there is incoming damage that can kill us, we use Flame Ward, and then we just spend our mana on Glacier. That's pretty much it. And then to recover mana, use Mana Strike. After we transition to Shadow Strike, so this is gonna look a bit different. I put my enchant weapon. So this is gonna look kind of similar. So we also have teleport, Flame Ward, same stuff. Except for Flame Ward, after level 35, you're gonna start using it in combination with enchant weapon to massively increase your damage. So you want to use both whenever you want to burst enemies, but always keep at least one charge. So in case there is like incoming damage that can kill you, you will always have like one charge. And so you use both, and then you just spam Shadow Strike. There you go. And then you recover mana with Mana Strike. That's it. One thing, you want to use Shadow Strike and Mana Strike at the same time. So look at my mana. It always goes up whenever I'm out of mana, because I only use Mana Strike whenever it's needed. The reason why it's doing this is because your right click has the lowest priority over the other skill slots. So whenever I press my right click and my other abilities, the other abilities will always be cast before the right click. So whenever I can't use my Shadow Strike because of mana, it's going to use my Mana Strike. And whenever I have enough mana to cast my Shadow Strike, it's going to cast my Shadow Strike over my Mana Strike. You can also do one other thing, is before using your combo of Enchant Weapon and Flame Ward, top your mana, pop the 2, and then spend all of your mana again. There's also one trick. Basically, Mana Strike, the mana it gives you is a bit delayed. Basically, what happens is that whenever you hit an enemy with a Mana Strike, it's going to generate an orb that is going to come from the enemy and goes towards you. So, meaning there is a small delay between your hit and getting the mana. You can abuse this by hitting the enemy one more time after being full mana, meaning that whenever you're going to spend your mana, it's going to get topped up right away, because you're going to have the orb that gives you mana is going to hit you after you start spending your mana. So gameplay wise, it's going to look something like this. So I'm going to spend my mana, then I'm going to use my mana, and boom. And you saw the first time I used my Shadow Strike, my mana went down and then it went back up again, because the delayed mana generation went to me after I start using my Shadow Strike. Yeah, just small trick to increase your damage output. Yeah, that's how you play the build. Okay, now for the skill trees. So first, when we unlock Fireball and at level 4 we can spec into it, we're going to put 1 point into Conflagration. Then we're going to replace it very quickly with Glacier, and we want to scale the big explosion damage. So we go for the top points. So this one, this one, this one, and then we ping pong between those two nodes. But we prioritize the hit damage against rare and bosses to increase our single target. At level 8, we spec into Mana Strike. So 3 points in Arcanist Blade, 4 points into Mana Drain, and then we have critical mana with critical rejuvenation. So you want to put 2 points into critical mana and 1 point into critical rejuvenation up until you're crit capped. And once you're crit capped, so you basically press C, and you look at melee critical strike chance. I'm at 106% right now, meaning I'm crit capped, I'm more than 100%, meaning I can respect that point and put it elsewhere. So at first we'll have 1 point here, 5 point there, and towards the end we want to branch out to this part, which is going to increase our mana generation on bosses. For a Shadow Strike, which we're going to spec at level 20, we want those 2 points first, then we want to put 2 points here, 2 points here, 2 points here, then we want to max Icy Flow, and then we want to go for Cold Steel. So we're gonna put 2 points in Cold Steel, 1 point in Cold Presence, and the final point would be in Cold Steel as well. Okay, next we're gonna transition to Shadow Strike. So we're gonna respec Glacier for Ancient Weapon. Ancient Weapon, you wanna have the active duration maxed out first, then the mana cost, so it doesn't bother you with costing you mana for your first window. It also gives a nice 40% increase damage. And then melee attack speed, really, really important. And finally, we go for the added and increased damage. At level 35, Flame Ward. So Flame Ward, you go for the +1 charge and the increased duration. Then we want to grab the Cold Conversion with Frost Ward. And then the increased fire damage. So this is going to get converted to increased cold damage. So imagine 250% increased cold damage for your burst window. You kind of want to use Flame Ward in combination with Ancient Weapon. And then final points are going to be in Barrier to increase our DR. And then at level 50, so before level 50 you use Teleport, but after level 50 you replace it with Surge. And you want to go for this node right here that is going to give you 50 ward per crit. So you're going to crit a lot because you're going to be 100% in crit chance. So basically it's 50 ward per hit. Effectively. Imagine you have a pack of mob with 10 mobs, it's 500 ward if you hit all 10 mobs. Then you have Long Strider to increase the distance. Invulnerability, pretty cool. And then this node right here that gives you a ward gain if you hit at least one enemy. So I prefer this over this node just to make it a bit more reliable, because sometimes you will only hit like 1 or 2 mobs depending on the situation. So yeah. Okay, now let's talk about the passive tree progression and some of the info there, because there are a few subtleties with Season 2. The first thing I want to talk about is the fact that I designed this passive tree with Shadow Strike in mind, so you don't need to respec your passive tree when you transition from Glacier to Shadow Strike. But obviously, if you want to min-max as much as possible, you would rather have like a different passive tree before you transition to Shadow Strike, so you get the most out of Glacier. I mean, Glacier is still gonna clear fine, don't worry. It's still gonna be like a really high damage ability for the campaign. Don't really have to worry about that. But yeah. Okay, what about the points? So first, you put 2 points into Elementalist, then max Arcanist, then max Mage Flurry, and then 5 points into Knowledge of Destruction. So from this point, you can put points into the Mastery passive trees. So we want to rush or build Gemini, which is the node in the Spellblade, sorry, passive tree that allows us to do wield swords. And this is the key to transition to Shadow Strike. So before getting there, we want to max Arcane Warden, then put 2 points into Infused Weapons, then 5 points into Arcane Shielding, then 4 points into Frozen Steel and 1 point into Infused Weapon. This allows us to max Essence Duel, and then we can allow Gemini. After we unlock Gemini, and we put a point in it, we want to grab 5 points into Mana River, because it's going to cost a lot of mana, your Shadow Strike. You want to put, 5 points into Prismatic Blade, 5 points into Defender of Wellrin, 5 points into Mental Fortitude, and 4 points into Prodigy. Okay, I'm gonna stop here for a bit, just to explain to you some of the scaling of the build with those passive nodes. Because Prodigy, if you read the line below, it gives you crit chance per 15 intelligence. This is base flat crit chance. This means this is added on top of the 5% base, and it's gonna get multiplied by the increased critical strike chance, which we also get with this point. But this is not from intelligence, this is from dexterity. So the idea of the build is to stack a lot of dexterity, because dexterity not only increases our crit chance, it also gives us increased damage for Shadow Strike and flat cold damage. So this is really important. This is the highest value affix for this build, dexterity. But contrary to intelligence, it's a rare stat for Mage. So what you want to do is every single piece of gear that drops with dexterity, you want to put it in your stash and wait to transition to Shadow Strike. And once you get your 5 points in there, you want to craft all of your gear with as much dexterity as possible. Prioritize getting T5 over like multiple T1 or T2s on multiple pieces of gear. Also prioritize getting it on body armor, because body armor has a higher scaling of your stats. So it goes, instead of going to 8 dexterity at T5, it goes to 12. Your flat crit chance, so you have 5 by default. You can also get 1% per 15 intelligence. But to be honest with you guys, you would rather have your flat crit chance during leveling with the added melee crit chance on your swords. It goes to 5% on both swords. You can get like 10% from your swords, 5% base, so you're already at 15. Then you're gonna have like a few points in intelligence. Maybe you're gonna have like 3 intelligence, so you go to 17 base crit chance. So yeah, prioritize flat crit chance on your swords. Really, really important to get crit capped. Why we want to get crit capped, by the way, is because in Shadow Strike, we're going to get a lot of crit multi through this node. So we're going to get per point 40 crit multi if we do Wield Sword. Okay, so we put 4 points into Prodigy. We're good. And then we put 6 points into Volca's Razor. Then we want to put 5 points in there. So when we have like higher attack speed, this makes it a bit smoother. And then for the last 2 points at level 70, we put it there, basically. But you can put and play the build after level 70. You can put even more points in there to max it out. Then you have a flat full damage here, here, and here. You could put points in there for even more defense. So yeah, there are a few options after level 70. I'm just taking my guard up until level 70, so basically, if you play efficiently, you're gonna reach Empower at level 70 around that mark. But after that, like, you can still play the build. It's dealing like really good damage. You're gonna be able to clear Empower just fine with this build. There's not gonna be a lot of problems. And the really high-end version of this build is also clearing just fine the end game. So it's practically the same. Maybe you are gonna have to switch a few points in your passive tree depending on the gear that you find and stuff. But overall, really strong. It's going to be pretty simple on this build. So before you transition to Shadow Strike, you're going to play Glacier, meaning you want to scale your spell damage. Also going to be a cold spell. So you want to use staffs. They have the highest amount of flat damage for spells. And you're gonna grab spell damage, cold damage, elemental damage. All those types of damage are really good. You don't really want to invest into cast speed. You would rather invest into melee attack speed if you have the choice between the two, because you want to spend as little time regaining mana with Mana Strike. It's also gonna convert really well when you transition to Shadow Strike, because not only melee attack speed increase the speed at which you recover mana, but also the speed at which you use your Shadow Strike. It makes the whole mana spender build much smoother. When you transition to Shadow Strike, this is where you gonna start unlocking a lot of the bases that are really powerful for the build. Notably speaking is the Sapphire Rings, which gives you max mana and mana regen. Those are two super important stats for the build. You want to get as much mana and mana regen as possible, as well as melee attack speed, obviously, to be able to use your Mana Strike faster. Then for defense, there is going to be a new affix that has been teased today. It's the day I'm making this video. Which is ward per second and ward decay threshold. This is going to be super important. I think we saw it on rings, if I remember correctly, because the only affix that gives us ward per second that we can craft is on Mage Body Armor and Mage Helmet. So those are very limited source of ward per second on your gear. So you want to have those new affixes on every slot possible. I don't know in which other slot is gonna be able to craft it on, but put it at T5, like the ward per second. You want to also get any ward decay threshold. This is basically like a sort of extra health, because all the ward decay formula is not going to apply to that, to the amount of ward below that number. So I have like a few on my boots. I mean, this is a lot of ward decay threshold, to be fair, on the boots. You have it also on this Mage Body Armor. This is pretty late into leveling, let's be fair. And you also have this relic that is kind of nice, which has ward per second. You unlock it very early. In terms of resistances, you have the Bone Amulet, a classic. Never go with something else before you can go with Jade Amulet, which increases your attack speed. Spider Silk Sash, really, really good. You could also have boots, like Herboran boots. That gives you cold res, and like you have other items that gives you reses, basically rings, for example. But I feel like Sapphire Rings outweigh the value of resistant rings. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the defensive piece of loot. And then for the damage with Shadow Strike, you want to grab swords, and very important, focus on flat melee crit chance. This is the most important stat. Then it's going to be increased cold damage and melee attack speed. Melee attack speed is going to make the builds much smoother, and increased cold damage is going to make you deal more damage than melee attack speed, but it's going to be marginal. So both are fine, but focus on flat crit chance on both weapons. And then, I don't remember at which level you unlock the Crystal Sword base, but I think it's pretty late. It's close to level 70. I think it's level 64, right? Because I only have 1 T5. So at level 64, this is the best base for the build. Like, straight up best base. It has attack speed, good amount of flat, and insane amount of melee attack, melee elemental damage, sorry. Also, quick note on uniques for the build. There are 2 items that you want to look for, especially for this build, which are going to be Morning Frost and Bloody Nib. The Morning Frost has a big upside and a big downside. The big upside is that it's going to scale your flat damage even higher with Dexterity, which we already stack for the build. This is going to make Dexterity even higher priority for this build if you have Morning Frost. But to be fair, it's already like the highest priority stat on your gear. And then we have Bloody Nib. So Bloody Nib is a unique design, especially for Shadow Strike. And it's going to give you cold penetration, the stack of bleed on you. And you are inflicted with bleed whenever you hit with Shadow Strike. Since we're going to hit a lot with Shadow Strike, we're going to have a lot of cold penetration. And this is going to ramp our damage to the moon, basically. And also this has a disadvantage because you're going to be inflicted with bleed. So you kind of have to watch out with Bloody Nib, because in certain situations, if you equip it too soon and you don't have enough ways to recover ward and stuff, you could literally kill yourself. So yeah. A few things before we go. All of what we talked about today, you're going to find it in the description. There's going to be a link to a Max Roll Planner. And there's also gonna be a link to the build guide on Max Roll once we can publish those. So you're gonna be able to see the full progression, what we talked about. There's gonna be even more details in that guide. So if you have any question, please feel free to go into that guide. Also comment under the video. I can respond to all of the comments, don't worry. And yeah, I'm gonna also put in a pinned comment if there is any changes with the patch notes and stuff for this build. So feel free to look at it as well. And yeah, good luck on your leveling adventures and see you for Season 2. Bye.